Hello, everyone. It is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with another exciting live stream. And in this video, I am going to be talking about my day today. Today, I mainly did work and texted with Beth. I do feel like I should have been more productive today. I got a little mixed up in exactly what I wanted to do. Um, so I ended up jumping around between a lot of different things before deciding on what I should focus on. But by the time I decided on a focus, the day was kind of already over. Um, right now, what I'm trying to do is learn more about Vue.js and try and figure out how to create a weather app using Vue.js. There was a really nifty tutorial that I found online, but I felt like the tutorial didn't really teach me how the app worked. It just more or less was like, so here's the code for how to make an app. So now I'm going back and I'm trying to break down the parts of the code that I don't understand and try and figure out exactly how it works. And that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, as well as just learning more about Vue.js in general and how it works. But anyways, how are you guys doing today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you like to talk about on the stream? Other than that, I've just been texting with Beth about, superpowers and short stories and original concepts and stuff like that. Yo, Kevin, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you like to talk about on the stream? Also, don't forget to smash that like button, Kevin. Truly appreciate it. And Matt, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you like to talk about on the stream? Kevin said first, and then he said, hello, yo, Kevin. And then Matt said, no, no, no. So Matt's already answered the three questions. Then Kevin said, yes, yes, yes. So he's having a good day today. He does have questions and he has discussion topics. Hit us up, Kevin. I'm ready. Let's see. Oh yeah, but yeah, don't forget guys to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it. It helps show that you're enjoying the content and helps others know that it is good content to be enjoyed. Oh, thank you for smashing that like button. I do appreciate it. As I've said now multiple times. I just need to use a synonym for appreciate. Let's see. Matt said smash that dislike button. Nah. Psh, you're better than that, Matt. You don't need that dislike button. Matt said, "Can we get 3 dislikes?" And he wants to build up that dislike following. Hashtag the Matt Hater Clan. He's working on it. Let's see. So right now I'm trying to figure out what the next hero is going to be for Superpower Battles Volume 4. Superpower Battles Volume 4 is going to follow a different hero than Volume 3. Volume 3 focused on Maker Man. Volume 4 is going to focus on a guy whose name I still haven't come up with, but I have figured out what his powers are going to be, and I'm currently trying to figure out what the powers of his villains are going to be. Matt said we already have two, so Matt is claiming that we have 2 dislikes. I only see like 2 viewers. I feel like it'd be interesting for them to be like, whoa, somehow we have 2 viewers but 1 like and 2 dislikes. That math doesn't add up, Matt. I'm not even good at math. I mean, good at math, good at math. My goodness, and I still know that doesn't add up. Let's see. Matt said, Jet, please stop making bad heroes. So, what do you feel like constitutes a bad hero? Then Kevin said, I Hulk, smash that like button. He said, you may need a new one, lol. Thank you kindly for smashing that like button, Kevin. Definitely vibe with that. Then Matt said, the evidence doesn't lie. I actually showed Beth a couple of the stories from Volume 3, and she gave the first one 9 out of 10. She had a small grievance with it, but it was something that I could easily explain that actually was already in the context of the story. And then she was like, oh, I vibe. And then the second one, she gave it 8 out of 10. And it was a similar thing. It was like her like small grievance that she had. I could easily explain, and it was from stuff that was already in the story. And then she was like, oh, cool. So yeah, it seems like so far Beth has really been vibing. I talked with Eric about some of my short story ideas while we were at HamCon, which by the way was the last HamCon like ever apparently, and he seemed to vibe. The only character that Eric didn't really care for was Monsterizer. Same thing when I talked to my brother about it. My brother didn't care for Monsterizer either. He was like, "That's kind of lame." Beth likes Monsterizer though. Matt said characters that have either nonsensical powers that break the context of the world or are just ripoffs or both. What do you feel like are characters that have completely nonsensical power? I mean, aren't superpowers in their own right kind of nonsensical? Then Kevin said, hides Matt. What evidence? I think it's interesting that you're like, hides Matt. And like, Matt is the evidence. Then Matt said, power down. I think power down's cool. He's a pretty hard counter to like a lot of characters. I like counter characters. It's kind of like a big thing in DC and Marvel, but I say DC even more. Yo, Kels, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? Kel said, hey, yo, hey. Then Godzilla said, scree. And then Nerd Tanker said, Jet. Yo, Godzilla and Nerd Tanker, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? I noticed that we have 4 viewers and 1 like. Yo, Kells, Godzilla, and Nerd Tanker. Don't forget to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it. And Matt, you could always smash that like button as well if you wanted to. Let's see. Matt said counter characters are the worst character. Whole crew here. And then he said, "Where's Kirby?" It's actually been a minute since I've seen Kirby. I hope he's doing well. I know that he started college not too long ago, and since then I haven't really seen him as much. Let's see. Then Godzilla said, "Because yes." Then Kevin said, "Hey, Kells." Nerdtanker said, "No, no, no. Where's Kratos?" Kratos did mention at one point that the new time would be easier for him to jump in on, but then we haven't really seen him that much. Then Matt said, "Did you say smash that dislike button 50 times?" So here's a fun fact, Matt. If you hit the dislike button an even number of times, starting from it not having already been pressed, then at the end, it's just not pressed. Kel said, also, Matt, neither my power system or my OC is ready yet, so you're still the king of OC battles for now. Then Matt said, that's what I thought. I'm actually currently working on the Hero for Superpower Battles Volume 4. Also, thank you for smashing that like button. Truly appreciate it. I noticed we went up from 1 like to 2 likes. Thank you. Um, so for Superpower Battles Volume 4, I'm not going to have it follow Maker Man. Maker Man was the star of Volume 3. For this volume, I'm working on a character who I don't really have a name for yet, but I'm trying to figure out what would be a good fit. I already have figured out his powers and his weaknesses, though. So I am interested in diving into that and trying to make villains who are able to exploit those weaknesses and counter our hero. Matt said, but if I did it 50 times and it was a dislike, then it stays a dislike. That's true. Matt said, Maker Man equals Mario Maker. It's like, no. I feel like that would be, that's a hard reach. That's a super reach. Uh, let's see. Godzilla said, I'm playing a D&D game where I play as a lizard man that breathes fire. Oh, okay. Is that a Dragonborn? I know I've played a Dragonborn once. It was in a campaign that Matt was running, actually. Then Kevin said, Matt, isn't Spawn technically a counter anti hero since he can't die and very overpowered but is still interesting? He said, I like to think so in a way. So counter characters are normally characters whose specific power sets exist to counter like another character. For example, Venom has an ability that allows him to sneak past Spider-Man's spider sense. He's like a direct counter against Spider-Man's spider sense, which is probably Spider-Man's best power when you think about it. Godzilla said, "No, I'm playing old school." Oh, well, what race is your character? Are you like a kobold or something like that? Kevin said, fair enough. He said, I do though. Because Matt said he didn't find Spawn very interesting. And that's understandable. I haven't read any Spawn yet. I don't have an opinion. I think Colin likes Spawn. Godzilla said, and I have like monster stats. Understandable. Normally you do have stats in D&D. Excuse me. Let's see, Matt said, to prove the point against me, you either have to contradict my thoughts or make a. Ooh, I don't know what you do with your phrasing there. Have to contradict my thoughts or make a strong case to the contrary of my thought. I guess you meant to say or. So I either have to contradict you, so find where you like slipped up, or make a strong case to the contrary. Okay. I guess the easiest way, if I was to go for the contradict thing, would be to ask you about characters that you like and then show how they are counter characters in their own right. And the easiest way to go to the contrary of your thought would essentially be a similar kind of thing to name a character or find a character that you enjoy who, in their own right, is just a counter character. Godzilla said he's level 0. Matt, is level 0 a thing in D&D other than the thing that Colin made up that he called level 0, but as far as I'm aware isn't an actual thing in D&D? Plus Colin's level 0 wasn't even like a level. It was like a alternate dimension where you understand that you're playing a game, which has the potential to be an interesting idea, but execution varies. Let's see. Matt, how do you feel about Kevin 11 as an example of a counter character? Because he does pretty much exist to be someone who can absorb the powers and abilities of Ben and use them against him. He's definitely like a direct counter to what Ben 10 is. And even with the current iteration of Kevin 11, it's like his power now is that he has better versions of all of Ben's aliens to counter all of Ben's aliens. Godzilla then said, I don't know. I was like, okay, Godzilla. Understandable. So you don't know what race your character is? You just know that they breathe fire? Also, when you said that you're playing old school, does that mean you're playing like an older edition of D&D? The current edition is 5th edition. What edition are you playing? Also, how is everyone's day today who tuned into the stream? Do any of you guys have discussion topics you'd like to talk about, or any questions that you might have? Let's see. Matt said, either find a counter character I like or prove how characters that I wouldn't see as a counter character that are good are in fact counter characters. But that's kind of the same thing. That's what I ended up also saying, something very similar, Matt. But yeah, it's not really like two different options. The main way is to just show you a character that's a counter character that you like. Um, then Kevin said, I'm a lizard man. He said, I'm playing an old edition. Understandable. At least that lets me know that you're playing not 5th edition. Matt said, Kevin, I'd argue, isn't really a counter character in the strictest sense. I mean, counter characters they can counter in many different ways. Uh, they don't have to be like, and my power is Ben can't use the Omnitrix. It doesn't have to be like that. But it's more of a thing where not only can Kevin absorb and use Ben's powers against him, but he can also absorb energy out of the Omnitrix, draining it, causing Ben to like time out of an alien form. Um, he also is better at like thinking on his feet, depending on the iteration of Kevin. It can be a thing where he's like more street smart than Ben, and he can use that to his advantage. Where Ben has kind of lived like a suburban life, Kevin knows what it's like on these streets, and he can use that to exploit Ben and manipulate him. Let's see. Kevin said, Jet in chat, what's your thoughts about Hellboy? He said, I find the universe to be interesting, but haven't read that much about it. Yet the movies, not so much. So I'd highly recommend that if you want to learn a little bit more about Hellboy, but you don't want to invest too much time into learning more about Hellboy, you could check out the Watch Mojo Hellboy Origins video. I also imagine that Comic Storian has probably done a Know Your Universe video about Hellboy. But those are a couple examples of YouTube videos that quickly skim over a character's origin just to give you a better idea about said character. Kel said, in my opinion, a good counter character would be someone who's the opposite of the main character, as opposed to Power Down, who just negates card effects. So the opposite, I understand where you're coming from with that. I did something like that with the first villain that Maker Man was facing off against. But then as I continued working through Maker Man's rogues gallery, I went farther away from opposite and more to just other ways that you could counter that aren't like the legitimate reverse of the powers. Because I feel like while that's definitely interesting, I feel like there are many other ways you can go about it. Though I think Eric would agree with you, where the opposite is kind of like the penultimate villain in a lot of cases. Godzilla said Burger King and McDonald's are good counter characters to each other. And then he said, heck boy, I like the concept of describing Burger King and McDonald's as counter characters. One is a king and one is a clown. So one is kind of like the ruler of the court and one is like a jester when you think about it. It is kind of an interesting dynamic between the two. Beth then said, "Hey y'all, what would y'all think of another Q&A collab vlog? Except I'm in cosplay." Yo, Beth, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? And don't forget to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it. Right now, we're talking about counter characters. Are they good? Are they bad? What is your opinion? Let's see. So Matt said Kevin in original Ben 10 is obviously more of a parallel to Ben, given that they are around the same age, both get alien powers. Kevin, however, is selfish since he grew up on the streets, having a fend for yourself mentality. Yet at the same time, being a parallel does not mean that you are not also a counter, and in many circumstances, the counter character is a parallel. Similar to how Kells was describing how the opposite is normally like a really good counter character in a lot of fiction. The opposite normally is some kind of parallel to the character, in many cases being like a rival or arch nemesis. Then Kells, in response to what Beth said earlier, said, "Yeah, Beth, that sounds good." Beth then said, "Also, will Matt make a peanut butter sandwich when he comes back? I can provide my own gluten free bread, given I am gluten free." Oh, you didn't say make a peanut butter sandwich. You said make me a peanut butter sandwich. You want Matt to make a peanut butter sandwich for you. You will bring the bread. You didn't include any of those other ingredients. You were like just the bread. Matt said, opposites aren't directly the same as counters. So even though Kevin has some opposite traits to Ben, there isn't a strict counter. So I feel like you're getting a little twisted when we're talking about opposites and counters. So let me explain the difference between opposites and counters. So having the opposite powers of someone normally ends up also being a counter. For example, the Flash has super speed. He's able to move incredibly quickly in order to avoid danger or attack opponents. Dad, how are you gonna do the be quiet thing but then move the chair? It's gonna just make noise. Dad has sat down with a bowl of fruit. He seems to be joining as a member of the audience. But I guess not doing a reveal. You know they're gonna ask for a reveal. It's gonna be like the next thing to say. Um, but the Flash, it is actually the next thing they said. The Flash has super speed. He's able to manipulate the speed force and use it in order to move at incredible speeds to do a variety of different things. The turtle, I would say, is his power opposite. The whole point of the turtle is instead of making himself fast, he manipulates the still force, which makes everything else slow. That's a hard opposite to the Flash while also countering his abilities. At the same time, though, the opposite ability isn't the only way that you can counter a power. There are many different ways for you to counter a superpower other than having the exact opposite power, if that makes sense. So that's the difference between counters and opposites. Opposites are normally very good counters, but they're not like the only counters that exist. Let's see. Where are we at in the live chat? Okay. Hmm. Oh, but yeah, I'd say Kevin is a parallel to Ben and that he is a counter because Kevin Eleven's abilities do allow him to directly counter Ben in many different ways. Then Kevin said, I find The Crow to be interesting since how he is one of the Batman movies and games, but don't know if he will be considered a counter villain or not. The Crow? The Crow, I don't know of a Batman villain called The Crow. Do you mean Scarecrow? If you mean Scarecrow, then I kind of understand where you're coming from. Now, whether or not he's a counter villain, I don't think he's a counter villain. The reason why I say that is because I don't think he's doing something that directly counters what Batman normally does. If anything, he's using what Batman normally uses against criminals against himself. So Batman normally uses fear in order to take advantage of the superstitious criminals of Gotham and allow him to better take them down, where Scarecrow is using fear in order to try and take down Batman. That's not necessarily a counter to Batman as much as it is a just a way to fight him. You know what I mean? It doesn't take what that character does and say like no you can't or let me reverse it back onto you kind of thing. Let's see. Beth said, "What is the difference between an opposite and a counter?" We actually went over that a little bit earlier. Kevin said, "Good question. I'm glad I answered that question." Godzilla said, "Oh, I have some more counter characters. Feel free, Godzilla, to introduce more counter characters to the conversation." Kevin said, "I will like to know the difference as well." Don't worry, I already answered that question. I'm glad that you guys vibed. Godzilla said, "Wendy's and Twitter." That's just a topical reference. Me and Aiden not too long ago looked at Wendy's Twitter and it was pretty solid. Matt said Kevin manifests the negative traits that he has with his selfish desires, turning him into the alien hybrid monstrosity. That's not. You make it sound like that's a power. You make it sound like the way that Kevin's power works is because he's filled with negativity. It's not really. It's just Kevin bit off more than he could chew. He tried to absorb too much power from the Omnitrix at once, which caused him to become an amalgam of multiple alien forms. But it's not like the negativity within him
Is that
manifested into a
permanent?
monster. So, Dad asked a question. Sidebar. So, you asked if
Was
Kevin's monstrous form was permanent. Um, no, it eventually wore off because of the fact that he absorbed a very massive amount of Omnitrix energy. He kind of stored it and burned it off like a battery over time. So eventually, he returned back to his normal form.
what's Gwen's ability?
Gwen, uh, hmm. So Gwen secretly is a magical alien, but it's a recessive gene.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but the show's been out forever. But it's a recessive gene that she got from her grandma. So Ben technically is like partially alien as well, but he didn't. The gene didn't express itself. Let's see. Beth said, "Dad reveal?" Question mark. Godzilla said, "Because Wendy's is roasting people on Twitter." I am aware. I am
Did you
aware of
did you
Wendy's
hear
Twitter.
about the first official LGBTQ hero in Marvel?
Um, is it a member of like a mutant team or something?
It's a character that they already introduced.
I know, but isn't it? Is
Mm-hmm.
not a mutant
Mm-hmm.
character? I thought it was.
Asgardian.
It's an Asgardian character. Loki? No.
Valkyrie.
Oh wait. You're saying like MCU? Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the comics. I was pretty sure the first Marvel LGBTQ character was like a
Probably.
Alpha Flight person or something.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a mutant.
Let's see. Kel said, "I want that dad reveal." Then Godzilla also said, "Dad reveal." Matt said, "I'm not asking for opposite powers, since that would be counter powers." He said, "Opposite should be utilized for personality, motivations, and objectives." Well, an opposite is kind of like a parallel. It becomes like a mirrored version of the other character in a way. Um, you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of times those are paired together. A lot of times they have both things. Uh, but it doesn't have to be that way. What is your perspective on like Venom as a counter character, for example, to Spider-Man? Because Venom has a lot of opposites to Spider-Man. He parallels Spider-Man. It's weird to say opposites. He has a lot of parallels to Spider-Man, while also having a power that explicitly counters Spider-Man's abilities. Let's see. And then Kevin said, "Yeah, Scarecrow. Yes." Beth said, "As a gag gift, should I get Jet a fancy superhero water bottle?" That is definitely a meme. Dad shook his head no. I'm not sure if you really get that reference, like where that comes from.
Guess not.
Matt said Kevin's powers are only a counter in the sense that he has the same powers as Ben and all at once. That Ben needs to outsmart Kevin, but that doesn't make Kevin a counter. And then he said, by that logic, most of Ben's villains would be counter characters. No, I feel like you're very much so underestimating what Kevin is capable of. Kevin isn't just like I'm an amalgam of everything that you are. He also has the ability to drain the Omnitrix's power, as well as take on the abilities of Ben and use them against him, as well as take on the abilities of Ben's
Was
allies
he
and
always a
use it
bad
against him.
guy?
Kevin started off as a bad guy, then an alien force ended up joining the team reluctantly. Then, over the course of Alien Force, they gain like a bond and become friends. And Ultimate Alien, Kevin gets mutated again in a different way, and it kind of messes with his mind. And then he starts regressing back into a villain. There's a point in the show where Ben's like, I'm just gonna kill him. Like, I have no patience for this anymore. And then, yeah. Uh, Dad had to get up to throw something away. And then eventually, after they settle that, those aren't empty. Those are still in the bag. Those are clearly new. Dad's like sniffing my deodorant. It's actually really weird. That's body wash and shampoo and conditioner.
All
Don't
in one.
don't open it for no reason. And he's sniffing that. The heck is happening? um, whoa. Kevin is a counter character. Long story short, we'll get back to it. Godzilla said alien hybrid monstrosities are great. Godzilla said that. Then Kevin said, I agree, Godzilla. Beth said, when that dad reveal happening? And she did say dad. Uh, Godzilla said, dad voice reveal. Then Matt said, well, normal in the sense that Kevin is no longer a monstrosity. He still absorbs powers. Or more specifically, can change genetic makeup to match material that he absorbs. It's weird to say genetic makeup. I don't think when Ben absorbed, not Ben, I don't think when Kevin absorbs concrete that it's like, oh, my genetics. Oh, I now have the DNA of concrete. You know what I mean? It's more like Absorbing Man from Marvel, where the material almost becomes like an outer shell for Kevin's body. Because you can tell when he gets hit and the material that he absorbs breaks off of him, that it is kind of like something that's on the outside of Kevin rather than him becoming that thing, which I think is interesting. That says a lot about the DNA that he absorbs because it makes you think it might just be like a flesh pocket or something. Let's see. Beth said hashtag dad reveal. Then she said, y'all making me curious about Ben 10 with all this genetics and science stuff.
Is this
You should check out Ben 10.
is this
Definitely.
supposed to be about Ben 10 or about counter powers?
It's really just us talking about whatever. But we got onto the topic of counter abilities due to the fact that I am actively writing another book, Superpower Battles Volume 4. And in it, I am thinking of what the villain's powers will be as direct counters to the hero's ability. To which then Matt says, counter characters are horrible. To which then we went into this. And then
Hey, let's name some movies that
well,
have.
hold on. Let's catch up with the live chat. As far as we know, the live chat could be going in a totally different direction. Godzilla said, I like giant radioactive hybrid monstrosities more than alien hybrid monstrosities. Understandable, you're a fan of kaiju, so that makes sense. Matt said, when powers and motivations are paired to characters, then they become counter characters, and they are significantly worse. So you feel like when a character's basis is built around another character, that it weakens the character that is based on the other character. I feel like that's not necessarily true. I feel like they end up working better together than with other characters. I will say that. Like Kryptonite Man is a pretty good match for Superman, but when you have Kryptonite Man fight like Martian Manhunter, he seems very irrelevant.
It's
You know.
more interesting when the villain's not the opposite.
Well, the villain doesn't have to be the opposite. You know, you
Or
can be
the
a,
same, like,
but you don't have to be the same either. You can be a counter without being the opposite or being the same. Lex Luthor is supposed to be the mental superior to Superman. You know, brain versus brawn. He's not the opposite and he's not the same. He's just taking on a
that's
different quality
better.
that counters Superman.
That's better.
Um, let's see. Kevin said, so like Wolverine and Magneto? Magneto can riggedy wreck Wolverine pretty hard. Or at least he should. And he has before, but it's not like a every time they fight thing, even though it probably should be. Kel said, yeah, Ben 10 is dope. Ben 10 is dope. I got a Ben 10 action figure right here. Rocking this Ben 10. Let's see. Beth said, okay, y'all, Jess deodorant actually smells good. Uh, Dad, can you confirm or deny that my deodorant smells good? Old Spice, pay me money. Do 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 do. That's our ad break for today. Let's see. Matt said, keep in mind, we're talking about Kevin in purely original Ben 10 context, and not counting his developments outside of that show, since he becomes even less like a counter character after the fact. Oh, and I don't know where you're coming from, Matt. So we can talk about Kevin 11 acting as a counter character within the original series, most def. It becomes a factor again in Ultimate Alien. It's not a thing in Omniverse, but in the reboot, Kevin definitely is a counter villain, even at that point. So, I mean, there are multiple different Ben 10 contexts, at least three, where we can discuss Kevin acting as a counter to Ben, not just the original series. Kel said, Beth, if you really want to nut in a safe for work way to some science, you should watch Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone is like a manga and now an anime that I've heard does have a lot of science stuff going on with it. It's like a shonen, which means it's like a four dudes action whatever anime. I only say four dudes because it's kind of what it means in Japanese. Um, but I'm not particularly interested in Dr. Stone. They've yet to convince me. Let's see, Beth said genetics are hardwired and actually don't change at all in real life. Hashtag science. Um, how do
That's,
you,
that's, I thought that you can have a mutation.
well, not only can you have mutation, I was about to mention epigenetics, the idea that certain things that you do in your lifestyle can affect like your genes.
I don't think that's true, but there is a thing called genetic drift, but I think it may only happen when you have offspring.
I'd recommend you and Beth hit up that epigenetics.
Where did
Dun,
you
dun, dun.
read that?
There are like plenty of sources. Dun, 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 dun,
I
dun,
don't
dun,
think
dun,
that's
dun,
a
dun.
real thing.
The study of changes in organisms caused by modification of genetic expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself.
Genes,
Oh, wait.
genes can be harmed by
Epigenetics is about
toxins and stuff.
epigenetics is about change in expression, not the code itself. So my bad. I am out of term in discussing epigenetics. But I'm glad I looked up the definition rather than to just be wrong. Uh, Let me see where we're at. Matt said, Jet, watch Dr. Stone. It's good. Stop hating the lack of dubs. Well, for one, they do need that dub. And two, do they have any interesting powers? I've asked you guys about that before, and it sounded like they don't. But I feel like I need those superpower battles. It's part of what I'm looking for. Godzilla said, Boomerang Man and Frisbee Man, good counter characters. Now, Captain Boomerang is a thing. I've never looked up Frisbee Man, but I wouldn't be surprised if such a thing existed. And who would Frisbee Man be a counter to? Did you just make up two people and say that one is a counter to another? Which is also fine. Matt said, Kryptonite Man sounds horribly stupid. Why does that exist? Have you looked them up? Names can be deceiving. Then Godzilla said, why does that sound stupid? Beth said, I ought to check out Dr. Stone sometime. Then Beth said, mutation. Mutations happen. That is nature, BS, nurture. I am at,
Versus nurture?
oh, yep, V is right next to B. That's probably what she meant. Uh, Kel said, Kryptonite Man to Superman is the equivalent of rat poison man to rats.
Or you could have like a yellow man against Green Lantern.
Back in the day when he couldn't affect yellow things.
Sinestro.
Or like Woodman, like Groot versus original Green Lantern, because he originally couldn't affect
Or
wood.
Groot versus Roundup.
Well, that's just similar to Kel's
Man.
joke. Beth said, genetic drift happens only with offspring. And then Kevin said, oh no, it's Rat Poison Man. Rat Poison Man would still be pretty threatening. If he could like manifest rat poison, enough rat poison can just kill anything, right? If it's just like a high enough concentration, then it's just kind of poison. Matt said the argument that you are making regarding counter characters seems too tied to the most basic form of what a counter character is, which is horribly broad and thus encapsulates most characters. I don't think it necessarily encapsulates most characters. So the idea of like a counter character in most situations, if you're gonna have like a superhero, most of their villains are probably going to be built up from the beginning to be a counter to that hero. That's just kind of how a lot of them are, but not how all of them are. It's not like a broad sweeping thing.
Do
For
you know who Man Bat is?
I do know who Man Bat is.
Is he a counter?
I don't think Man Bat is a counter character. Reason why is because there's nothing about Man Bat in particular that's like, I am supposed to be in direct opposition of something that you normally do that somehow prevents or restrains you from operating as you do on a regular basis. Batman is going to have a lot less counter characters because he doesn't have powers. You know, there are not a lot of people are like, I'm going to defeat Batman by disabling all his weaponry. A matter of fact, I don't even know of a Batman villain whose thing is like, I make his gadgets not work. But that actually would be pretty solid. I don't know why he doesn't fight like a hacker villain. That's like
Have
a
you
normal
heard
thing.
of the Spider-Man villain called the Fly?
I have heard of the Spider-Man villain called the Fly. I don't know if he's necessarily a counter character.
Well, he can do everything Spider-Man can do.
And fly.
Yeah.
Does he have webs though, like an equivalent?
No, but he can see in like all directions and stick to walls and fly.
See in all directions is nowhere near as good as spider.
He can punch.
Excuse me. He can punch. Yeah, I can do that. Then Godzilla said, "Wait, Captain Boomerang is a character? It's not. He put Captain Boomerang Man. Captain Boomerang Man might not be a character, but Captain Boomerang is."
Then the Suicide Squad guy.
Yeah. Kel said Dr. Stone doesn't have superpowers. Probably not going to check that out, guys. Matt said, like the argument you're making equivalates. Is equivalates really a word? I don't think that's right, Matt. Equivalates Kryptonite Man to Lex as both counter characters, which doesn't make any sense. They counter him in different ways. It's similar to how Mr. Mixelplix can act as a counter against Superman. Superman's whole thing is like, if it's a normal thing that exists in physical reality, I'm probably good against it as long as it's not kryptonite and it's not magic. And also as long as I have plenty of like yellow solar radiation. So then Kryptonite Man's like, oh, yo, Kryptonite? I'm just that. Same thing with Metallo. They have a similar thing that's set up. Also, Cancer spelled with a K. That is also a Superman villain.
The Magician.
Kryptonite balance.
You know him?
Yeah, the Magician uses magic-based stuff against Superman.
Bizarro.
Bizarro is like an opposite, but he also has the
same
opposite powers.
He has the same powers.
He doesn't have the same. Well, except for super strength and flight.
And speed and everything.
But his like cold breath is like fire breath,
Oh, really?
and his heat vision is like ice rays.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he does stuff like
Lame. They retcon that.
Let's see. Kel said the show is more realistic. He said I put that in quotes because it's still an anime/manga. Understandable, Kel. I know where you're coming from on that. Godzilla said in real life we are all terrible characters. He said if I was in a book, I would be a rather terrible character because yes. I thought you were gonna say real life we would be relatively terrible characters because in real life there aren't as many eventful things happening, which I disagree. I feel like there's actually probably a lot that goes on that we overlook that if seen from an outside lens with enough context would tell like a rather interesting story. Matt said, speaking of Batman, See, Batman, for how most villains aren't counters, and how so many of them are well recognized and loved. Well, you happen to be talking to a Batman hater. Dun 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 dun. Dun. I used to like Batman a lot more when I was younger. I honestly don't care for Batman that much, nor do I read Batman. When's the last time you've seen me read anything Batman?
I don't believe it.
Batman is just not that good. Batman fights some of the lowest tier people, period, in like the DC universe. And he on occasion will do like this really big thing and you'll be like, "Wow, if Batman can just do that, why doesn't he just always win?" And it's because Poison Ivy
Does he?
is a really good
He
villain.
scales to whoever he's fighting to make it challenging.
But that's kind of lame. You know, the things he should be fighting should be like harder. Or Batman should be, it's weird to say or Batman should be better, but it alternates too hard. Like when Batman's with other people, he'll be like, and then I designed this special suit that let me do all these things I can't normally do, and then I beat the bad guy. But then when he's by himself, he's like, ah, the Penguin's normal goons got me again.
Well, it's
Oh
like, what
no.
about
Oh.
in Iron Man 3? And he had like 50 Iron Man suits, but then he didn't like pull, build 50 Iron Man suits to fight Thanos later.
You know what? Iron Man 3 for one is a bad movie, but Iron Man's comic book has been really good. And Iron Man actually does have counter characters where Batman does not.
And why did he blow up all the suits at the end of the movie?
Because he was like, Pepper, I'm gonna put all this behind me, not really. He does that multiple
He didn't even
times.
need the Avengers. He could just have the 50 suits.
The 50 suits weren't really that good. With no one in them, it seems like they just broke. They might as well have just been like bad robots. Matt said, this is also why I prefer Batman and Iron Man to literally any other superhero. But Iron Man's all about those counter characters, though. Ooh, so you know how Lex Luthor, his whole thing is like, I am like the greater mind over Superman's strength. The Mandarin, who's like the main Iron Man villain for a lot of people, though personally I've never read a Mandarin story. I just haven't.
Me either.
Though in not Batman, Iron Man Armored Adventures, I watched that animated series, and Mandarin actually is a pretty big deal in that. So I have seen a Mandarin story at least. The whole idea is if Iron Man is the master of tech and he understands science, then the Mandarin is the master of magic and he's like the mystical counter element. You know what I mean? And that's just one of many examples of counter characters for Iron Man. But Mandarin's one of the more well known counters for Iron Man. Let's see. God's it scrolled down really hard. Give me one moment. That shows that we need to read through more of this live chat. Do 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 do. Godzilla said, "I literally just made up two characters. I thought, nope, Captain Boomerang's real." Matt said, "Equivalates isn't a word, but it gets the idea across." Dad is also shaking his head. Godzilla says Superman is too OP. Not true. I feel like everyone who says that doesn't read Superman
There's a lot
books.
of characters in DC that are strong as Superman. Like he'll fight like a random alien, and it'll be as strong as him.
Well, a lot of times Superman is always paired up against people who are counter characters. Superman very rarely, if ever, is fighting someone who doesn't have something that allows them to kind of bypass Superman. That's kind of the idea. The Justice League also has a lot of counters. Like whenever they're together, they'll fight someone who's like, I counter all of you. That's my thing. I somehow beat every one of you. Where are we at? Do 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 do. Godzilla said, so I want Superman to fight Fing Fang Foom. Superman could probably knock out Fing Fang Foom, like with the greatest of ease. Fing Fang Foom is like a giant like kaiju in Marvel. He's like a big dragon guy. Iron Man even has a Fing Fang Foom Buster armor. That's essentially like a giant Iron Man mech suit. Um, he actually fought Fing Fang Foom in the current run. Godzilla said, in all the Avengers, I'm not sure how well Superman would do against all the Avengers. Um, Superman and Hulk fought once in like the 90s. There was a crossover where there was like a big battle, and in it, Superman was like, it took like all I had, but I was able to knock out the Hulk. If that fight had gone any longer, then Hulk would have gotten me. But it's one of those things where he's talking, but you can't really see it.
All he
Like
had
you
to
can't really tell that like
all he had to
he's been
do
hurt.
is throw the Hulk in orbit, and then fight would be over.
I think he'd have to go a little bit harder than orbit. Maybe like into like a black hole
How
or
would he
something.
escape orbit?
So the Hulk once was sent to another planet, like Planet Hulk, and he got back.
I'm talking about an orbit where you don't have anything except you're just in orbit, not where you're on a planet with resources.
Hulk would probably get picked up by like a satellite or something stupid. It's it's always something like that, Dad. I just feel like space isn't good enough. The Phantom Zone, that would help hold Hulk for a while, the very least. It's probably one of Superman's like best like, oh, well, just you'll be back later, I guess, but you're gone now. Phantom Zone projector's pretty good. Do 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 do. Let's see. And then he said, and Thanos versus Superman. I wish Thanos just had more of an imagination. I feel like the Reality Stone can do a lot, and he just didn't do a lot with it. I think Superman could speed blitz Thanos before he could snap his fingers.
I think the dumbest part of Infinity War was when Star Lord was trying to punch Thanos.
Star Lord is kind of a adult baby. It
Thanos
doesn't really.
can like exchange blows with the Hulk, so Star Lord's punches weren't going to do anything.
Right, he's just an adult baby. That's what I'm saying. Star Lord doesn't really understand. Uh, then Godzilla said, "Oh, and Captain Boomerang. I'm sure Superman's fought Captain Boomerang at some point." Let's see. Kevin said, "Doesn't the Riddler in Batman technically have no powers?" Now that's true. The Riddler is supposed to be an intellectual counter
Most of his
to
villains don't
Batman.
have powers.
Well,
The classic ones.
Poison Ivy has powers.
And
Um,
Mr. Freeze doesn't have
Mr. Freeze
powers.
doesn't have powers. He's gets close with his tech. Sometimes he's like a weird cryo guy. Like sometimes he has powers depending on the
Does Bane
interpretation.
technically have powers?
Yeah, he uses venom in order to be the strength superior to
If he
Batman.
didn't have his chemicals, he wouldn't be able to do anything.
Well, he's also described as being like a criminal mastermind, is the idea. He's supposed to be like the brawn and the brains, but in certain interpretations, he's just like the Hulk, and I really hate that. I also don't like it when they just make him like a luchador. That's also very annoying. He has deeper
Oh,
motivations than that.
luchador.
Well, they'll make him seem like he just cares about like, I am a fighter, ding 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 ding, ding, like that kind of thing. And it's like no, like he's definitely like a crime boss. Let's see. He said the same for the Penguin dude. He said, and maybe Two Face. Two Face doesn't have any powers. And he said maybe the Joker. Joker, I think he has Dionysium now. Batman also has Dionysium now, which is kind of dumb. But they both fell into this pit of a chemical that contained a metal from the dark multiverse, and it made Batman like back in his prime physically again. And it's like I'm however years old, but now I am like how I was when I started, but with all my skills and stuff like that. And that's essentially a power. It's almost like giving him a like regenerative serum or something like that. It's not that he like heals faster necessarily, but he's back at his prime, and it could potentially be like a long lasting back in his prime. It could be the way that they explain Batman can just always kind of be Batman kind of thing. We'll have to see what they do with it over time. Let's see. Matt said quite a few of Batman's villains don't have powers. That is true. Godzilla said Kells actually would be a great protagonist. He's right. I am just salty that I would just be the comic relief and the person that talks about Godzilla and stuff. Godzilla, you seem like a cool person. Also, it's interesting that you were like Kells would be a cool protagonist. Kells, Godzilla wants that documentary. Christian Davis said, "What's good? Yo, Christian Davis, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? And don't forget to smash that like button." Christian Davis said, "What did the penguin even do?" So the penguin has
Minions.
an equivalent to Batman's utility belt being his umbrella. A lot of times they'll be like,
Gas.
yeah, or like bullets, or it's a
But he has
shield.
minions.
He does also have minions, and he is like a crime boss a lot of times. And he has his own club, the Iceberg Lounge. And then Christian Davis said, "Be a short little Danny DeVito." That is true. Danny DeVito was the Penguin. Bit a guy's nose off, right? In that movie, Batman Returns. Kells said, "If you think about it, every antagonist is a counter to the protagonist in some way." I don't think all the time. Some, I just feel like it doesn't really work. I noticed that a lot of Batmans try to out Batman Batman. I think that's just a dumb idea. So Bane is like, "I'm gonna try to be stronger and smarter than you." And then Scarecrow's like, "I'm gonna try to be scarier than you." But I never have liked the ER villains where it's like, "I'm whatever you are, like I'm more that." Like I hate the
Do they
concept of.
say such things?
It's not that they say. Well, sometimes they do. Because I think Professor Zoom is supposed to be faster than the Flash, and he definitely says it. He's definitely like, I move faster than you. When their whole thing is that they do a thing, don't just make their villain, "I do that thing better." I just feel like that's kind of lazy. They're just better things that you can have for powers. I prefer a turtle story over like a Professor Zoom story like any day. Let's see. Godzilla said the penguin has the country Antarctica. He said he owns all the penguins. He said, "I just made that up." I know that you just made that up, but that would have been interesting. That would be a weird flex, but it sounds very campy. Kevin said, "Lol." Matt said, "Jet, the emphasis on power struggles is why you don't like Batman." He said, "I want characters and struggles that aren't all flash." How often does a counter scenario offer significant amounts of depth beyond, "Oh no, I must think outside of the box to deal with this slightly annoying scenario"? Well, the "oh no, I must think outside of the box to deal with this" is accurate. Slightly annoying scenario, I think, is downplaying it. A lot of times, the odds against them are big, big, big. It's not just like, "Oh no, Captain Boomerang stole my grocery list." It's normally something where if they can't think out of their box and use their powers in a creative way, like the multiverse dies or something like really important occurs. Speaking of which, that's another thing that I don't like about Batman. His villains feel very small time. They seem to be very Gotham City focused. You could be like, "That's any superhero," to which then I'd be like, "Not true most of the time." I'd say the Flash also has a lot of like Central City focused people, but Superman, a lot of times he's fighting beings who are like, yeah, like the Earth or like the universe. Like there's like a larger scale thing that I want to do. Wonder Woman's like fighting gods. Green Lantern's fighting aliens. A lot of times it's also like the Earth, the whole planet. You know, Batman's like, "Oh no, downtown Two Face has a gang. He's essentially just a gang boss. He has a quarter thing." Ah, man, it's crazy. It's not really. It really isn't. And it's things that all those other heroes who are normally framed as being his equal could just easily get rid of. They're just like not actual problems. But then he's always, when he's on the team, it's like, "Man, Batman's so good. Oh, he helps out so much." And I don't really think it makes any sense.
You should do a trivia on here where you ask a question and then whoever types the correct answer in first gets points, and at the end you see who has how many points.
If we had a moderator who could actually just keep up with that, so I wouldn't have to, that'd be pretty great.
Well, you just give her every time somebody gets the right answer and they're the first person with the answer, you just write a dash next to their name on a piece of paper, and you add up the dashes.
Would you guys be interested in doing a trivia thing at some point? Godzilla said, "I don't read Superman because yes, you should check out that Superman. It's not bad."
The John Burns Superman run from the '90s, that's good.
Um, I will say current Superman is a little weird. Brian Michael Bendis is on it, but it's not terrible or anything. Godzilla said, "I'm more of a Marvel boy. Sorry, no problem. You might like DCU. That's DCYOU. It was DC's initiative to try and make more relatable characters. I feel like that's the big difference between Marvel and DC. DC's trying to go for more like, how can they use their powers in creative ways to try and solve a problem? Where Marvel is trying to go for, how can we make readers feel like they are or can relate to these characters?" And I feel like Marvel pulls in a lot of people through that. And I get that, but that's just not what I really look for when I'm like reading a superhero story. I'm not trying to be like, man, Spider Man's so much like me. I'm trying to see characters use their powers creatively to overcome an obstacle. I don't want to see Spider Man be like, how am I going to pay my rent? I want to see how he's going to like stop the Green Goblin, you know? So to me, it just ends up being a lot more puff that you don't really need. Matt said Batman, although still ridiculous with what he can do, is still grounded, and you don't like that. Nothing is grounded about Batman. Hit me up.
He jumps off buildings.
He has tons of exposable, not exposable, well, it is exposable, expendable, exposable income. And they don't do a lot of Batman stories that are like, oh man, I'm running out of money because I'm like constantly doing stuff. But you know who they do that with? Green Arrow. Green Arrow multiple times has been like, I'm poor because I it's just a bad. You can't just keep doing that kind of thing and it never come back to bite you on the butt. Um, Lex Luthor recently actually gave away all his money, which is interesting. They're trying to like play with him a little bit. He's also now like half Martian. Well, like there's a lot of stuff going on with Lex Luthor.
Man.
You'd have to read into it. There's like context. They didn't just do that to do it. It makes sense with
How
the
does
current
he
story.
become half Martian?
That's a whole can of worms. Let me read through this live chat.
Go ahead.
It's a lot. Matt said Dr. Stone is even more grounded, and you hearing that destroys any investment. It's not that I'm against a grounded story. I like superpowered characters having to overcome other superpowered characters in a creative way. Not I'm super strong, I just punch you. It's I'm super strong, but you're like intangible. Like it my power essentially doesn't matter. How can I make it matter? How can I still use that to somehow defeat you? I think that's a very interesting dynamic. And it has to do with no matter what your powers are, there can always be someone else who just has a leg up on you, but you can always find a way to overcome if you use your intellect. You know, use the toolbox that you have at your disposal alongside with like some cunning, and you can do anything kind of thing. Uh, let's see. Matt said, likewise, a very unrealistic scenario isn't bad. It is based upon the strength of the narrative. So, when it comes to, well, honestly, Matt, wasn't that like a somewhat contradictive thing? You were like, no, 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 you don't like stuff because it's grounded. No, no, no. If anything, it didn't contradict as much as you were like, it's just a quality of taste thing based on what you said, which is fine. I would agree with that. It is just a taste thing. Because he more or less said, you don't like grounded stories because they're grounded, which I don't agree with that. But then you were like, but unrealistic stories don't have to be bad. And it's like, I agree with that. Yeah, and it's whatever.
So you would never read a comic book that had no abilities or special gadgets. It was just, you know, like a crime comic.
Probably wouldn't be interested. I'm not a super like mystery guy. So I'm not super into like whodunits, which is another Batman thing that I don't care about. Let's see. Kel said it's hard to do crossover battles with Superman because if his inconsistent writing due to having so many writers, unless you specify which Superman you're using. Fun fact: I think for any kind of death battle scenario or who would win fight, it's very important to specify what version you're using, regardless of it's Superman or anybody else. Imagine doing like a who would win Robin Hood versus like Tarzan and not specifying which one you're talking about. You know, you could pull things from literally anything. You could be like, and Tarzan versus Dracula, Tarzan did, because they're characters who are so overused and they just exist in so many different things. Let's see. Matt said the issue becomes the more unrealistic a scenario is, the easier it is to just throw a bunch of flash out to distract from a lack of narrative depth. I don't know why you feel like superpowered things are a lot of flash in a pan. Do you have like a good like example of that for like why you feel that way? Because I just feel like it's just not accurate. It just sounds like a outside perspective from someone who hasn't looked in. Like how people are like, Superman's too OP, is like a lot of those people just don't read Superman stuff, so they don't know that the characters actually are a direct counter to Superman. Kel said, Jet, can I at least tell you the premise of Doctor Stone?
How? Oh. Does
Oh,
Doctor Stone even really exist?
yeah, it's like a real anime and manga thing. Do you mean like exists as a fictional media? Like, yeah,
No, I mean, is he like trolling?
Doctor Stone is a real thing. I
Okay.
actually am aware of Doctor Stone. But we have hit an hour, so I am going to end the stream for now. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding, ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we do these live streams. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the one only, logging out. Peace, guys, and I hope to see you all tomorrow on the stream. Don't forget to smash that like button if you haven't already, and share this video with your friends. Catch you later. Chicka